Okay, let me pause for a second. I'm gonna start over. That's bad. I like this. The intro is the hardest part. Hey everybody, Charlie here from Airplane Academy. It's a Texas morning. We're 5,500 feet over about the Waco area. Couldn't ask for better weather. It's a little hot, but that's Texas. Kind of reflecting here on a Saturday morning. We get to go fly. I've been flying for about 15 years or so, and this is probably my most relaxing and fun thing to do. And the only time that I think I've actually been a little bit apprehensive or maybe even afraid, if we're being honest, is my first solo flight. That happened about 15 years ago. And for a lot of people, that can be a scary thing. The instructor gets out, you look around the cockpit, and it's just you. There's nobody else there. So today I just want to cover some things that can help you on your first solo. But most importantly, if you can remember it, we're going to cover the one thing you definitely don't want to do. So stick around for that at the end. All right, the first thing is to use the checklist. You've been going through that in your training. The checklist is there for a reason, particularly in times where you're going to be nervous or your flow is out of order. The first solo, do it by the book. Just use the checklist. That's what it's there for. I had a lot of instructors that would just tell me, hey, you're not using the checklist. I said, well, I have that part memorized. Well, you probably don't, and especially in a stressful situation, you're going to forget something. So just eliminate that risk and go ahead and use the checklist. It's there for a reason. So the second thing is give the airplane a really good pre-flight inspection. Don't be rushed. Don't be hurried. Use the checklist. It's going to be up to you to make sure that the airplane is airworthy. And you want to make sure that on such an important flight, such as your first solo, you don't end up taking off with the pitot tube cover stuck on there or something silly that you could just eliminate for your first solo flight. Give it a really, really good pre-flight inspection. Use the checklist while you're doing so. Next thing is to tell air traffic control that it's your first solo flight. If it's a towered airport, go ahead and let them know that. If it's an uncontrolled field, go ahead and announce to the traffic pattern that it's your first solo. People are going to give you probably a lot more room, a lot more grace and patience, knowing that it's your first time up there and you're probably going to be pretty nervous and you got a lot on your mind, a lot on your plate. So don't be afraid to go ahead and announce to people that it's your first solo flight. It can help you a lot. And then when you're flying around, don't be afraid to announce yourself as student pilot. After your tail number, say 916 Delta Foxtrot, student pilot. I found that air traffic control is going to be a lot easier on you if you do that. They're going to provide a lot more help. So particularly on your first solo flight, go and tell people it's your first solo flight. It's only going to help you. The next thing, nail your airspeeds. This could be a really easy thing to be undisciplined about when you're training, particularly if you're landing on really, really long airstrips. Where I'm based out of, I have a 7,000-foot runway. So if I come in to land way, way too fast, it's not a big deal. You know, I have 7,000 feet to work with. But particularly on your first solo flight, go ahead and nail those airspeeds, your approach speeds, your landing speed. Just fly by the book. The whole point of the first solo is to do what you've practiced. So make sure you go ahead and nail your airspeeds. Okay, when you're soloing, you really want to view it as a routine flight. You're probably going to practice the flight at the same airport. When I soloed, I practiced the pattern probably 30 times at Mesquite Airport in Dallas, Texas, before the instructor got out. And so really for me that day, it was really just a routine flight. So if you can view it that way, the morning of your solo, you're not really doing anything different. It's just repeating what you've already learned, what the instructor has already deemed you capable of. And so if you can view it as a routine flight, it's going to help cut out some of those jitters. It definitely did for me. When you're soloing, a really, really good way to kind of memorialize that is to video some of it. Now, I'm definitely not saying you know, hold up your iPhone and have a dashboard camera or anything. You definitely don't want to be distracted. But there's so many easy, cheap mounts you can buy for a GoPro, like the one right up here, that you can go ahead and set, hit record right when you take off or before you take off, and you can totally forget about it. But then afterwards, you'll have the whole flight documented, and you'll have that as a good piece of memorabilia. But you won't have to be messing with it or think, oh, I'm on camera right now. So if you can video what you can, it's going to be a really special moment. When you're soloing, you really don't want to be pressured by air traffic control or other pilots. Don't let anyone try to pressure you into making a short approach or speeding up your cadence or making a quick takeoff to avoid landing traffic. Don't let anyone pressure you into something you don't want to do. One of the things I've really had to learn as a pilot is that I'm independent of other pilots. It's up to me to maintain the safety of the airplane and the safety of that flight, regardless of what air traffic control is telling me to do. You can always tell them no. If they give you a landing clearance that you're not ready for or a takeoff clearance you're not prepared for, tell them you want to wait, and then they have to help you with that. So it's up to you to maintain the safety of the airplane, the safety of the flight. So don't be pressured by anyone else. It's your flight, it's your solo. Okay, one more thing to definitely do, and we've already said it, is to use the checklist. This one is worth repeating a second time because on a day that you're going to solo, you're prone to forget something just because of jitters and You might your cadence might be different than what you're used to, or not having the structure of the plane. Any one of these things can distract you from an important part of the checklist. Maybe putting fuel on both, maybe going full rich on the mixture. I've noticed silly things when my cadence gets messed up. I miss things if I'm not using the checklist. So we're saying it again, use that checklist. Okay, so that was a lot of things to do, but a lot, that's 8 or 9 things to remember. We're gonna switch it around a little bit. I'm gonna give you one thing to not do. If you only take one thing away from this video, don't do this on your first solo flight. And that is, don't try anything new. Everything we've been telling you to do about view it as a routine flight, use the checklist. These are things that you should have been doing, throughout training. So if you can remember, don't do one thing, just don't try something new. Don't try a new type of approach or a short approach or a new kind of stall. Just go fly the pattern. Accomplish your solo flight. You've done this a lot of times. The only difference is you're not going to have 200 pounds in the right seat from your instructor, and the airplane's going to fly great. It's going to love not having someone in the right seat, and you're going to have an absolute blast. So the one thing to not do is to not try anything new. If you want to join the journey to becoming a more proficient, confident, safe pilot, go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're going to be putting out tons of content of helpful tips, tricks, frequently asked questions. We're just going to document everything we possibly can about flight training, airplane ownership, and being a pilot. We love flying. This is what we do every day when we can. And so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also go over to airplaneacademy.com. We're putting out new content all the time. If you don't have time for a video but want to read an article, there's so many questions that are answered on the website, and it's growing every day. So head over to the website, hit subscribe, and can't wait to see you next time.